Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Brock Gonellis, live from the Hudson Valley, and I am in the ATL shouting. All right, Brock, let's get right into it. We are in international embarrassment officially. They won't even shake his hand. World leaders won't even shake his hand. They look at him as if he's the plague. Let's talk about Trump attending the pontiff's funeral, the homegoing for the Pope. The guy is just a joke. He didn't even know what to wear. Then he falls asleep. Does it get any worse?
The falling asleep is just such an embarrassment. But, great visual of him and Zelensky in chairs face to face, like off to the side. Apparently, Trump even came out of it saying that he thinks now, saying that Putin doesn't appear to want peace. Like maybe that, simple ideas making its way into his corroded brain.
Right.
Macron pretty much sort of, really embarrassed him with the non-handshake and the hug of Zelensky. But I think that was pretty much emblematic of what, all world leaders were thinking. So I'm sure he got a bunch of, attaboys, on his group chat.
Absolutely. And Macron has always stood strong in the face of Trump, even with the first go round. So I'm not surprised there that he stood up to him. His boorish behavior doesn't endear himself to anyone. So no surprise there. But let's stay with the theme that may get this guy, thrown out of office. The deportation, ICE grabbing a Cuban-born mother of a 1-year-old girl, separating them indefinitely, and 3 kids, ages 2, 4, and 7, who are U.S. citizens. All right, now we're getting into that impeachment. I just feel like the more they do, the more ammo there is for impeachment. They are flat out denying a Supreme Court order and ruling.
Yeah, I don't know where they're deporting these like 2 and 3-year-olds to. Is there like an El Salvador daycare that they're sending them down to? It's absolutely absurd. And plus they're U.S. citizens. So that's another, breaking of, in essence, U.S. law.
Right.
I did see in a clip from an Ossoff town hall where a woman got up angrily saying, "What are you doing? We want impeachment and removal now." Now he said, like, we don't have the army in the Congress to do it. We don't have the votes. But he came out and agreed with this woman that Trump had multiple impeachable offenses, that it would be no problem to draw up some serious charges against him.
Wow.
How do we peel off the MAGA?
Right, right. And that's the thing. We got to get those folks to get some balls. This arrest happened at a routine ICE check-in, which really bothers me, right? Now, you're asking for these people to follow the law. They're following the law, and then you are traumatizing them and torturing them by deporting them who knows where. And we're back to the child separation thing. It's shocking, it's cruel, it's inhumane, and it's beneath this country to do this. But,
Pam Bondi's out saying that the official stance of the U.S. government is that ICE can go into, using this Alien Act, can go into anybody's home without a warrant and, in essence, look for what they would call illegal immigrants. So that just throws out the Constitution on, unlawful search and seizure, having the whole point of having to go and get a warrant from a judge and having to have probable cause. But this is just, okay, free reign, knock on any door, or as you know, knock down any door, right? Shoot down any door. And then we know what comes of this. People get scared shitless. They don't know. These ICE agents aren't even in uniform half the time. And, it inevitably leads to shots being fired because it's fight or flight. Well, what do you do when somebody bangs your door down and comes barreling into your house? You don't think this is some, proper, police activity. You think you're about to get killed.
Right. But have you noticed there haven't been any really violent interactions with ICE, right? They seem to be cherry picking women and children, guys that are, everyday citizens. They don't seem to be knocking on the doors of real gang members. I find that
Yeah.
kind of strange. I find that kind of what we would call bitch assness. Hey, you want to go after some violent people? I'm sure people could. I know we could tell you where they are here in Atlanta. We know where MS-13.
Well, it is interesting because we talked about this like about a month ago, right? Saying like, wow, once they, someone's going to get an incident on camera, that's
Right.
going to be a really bad visual for ICE because they're going to be, intimidating people, this and that. And you're right, that hasn't happened yet. There hasn't been talk of any kind of, no shots being fired,
No
no
shot
one.
fired.
Now, no, at least no visual evidence of anyone really resisting ICE, fighting with ICE. Like there just hasn't. You're right. It's been kind of a quiet effort so far. You think
Yeah,
that's intent? You
I
think it's intent?
absolutely, absolutely. Because if you were serious about it, you would go ahead and get the real killers that are out there. But I don't think they want the smoke. I don't think they
Hmm.
want the optics of the smoke. Because
Hmm.
then we are definitely turning back the clock to 1968 America and the showdowns with the Black Panthers and just the murderous rampages that police went on, right? They don't want that. Number one, maybe they don't have the firepower to go up against it when they're sending out 6, 8, 10 ICE agents and you're going into known gang territory. Because if you want to work with local police, they can tell you where known gang activity is happening. But they're not confronting those people, right? They're confronting hairdressers, soccer coaches, right? Sheet metal workers, right? Mothers of young children, right? Like, what's up with that? Like, have some balls, right? If you want to talk a good game, if you want to talk badass, be badass. Don't just talk about it and not be about it.
There was some talk that there were some rumors. I don't know if they got confirmed yet. They're also going into some of the housing for like the wives and spouses of our armed forces personnel. I think specifically some Coast Guard personnel. Can you imagine that? You got
Oh,
someone out there fighting to defend the country while ICE is in there raiding their home and deporting their spouse.
disgusting.
So, I mean, that's kind of where we are in this, but the sentiment clearly not on the side of the government on this one. They don't care at this point, right? They don't think there's ever going to be another fair election. So whenever I don't think that they're ignoring the polls because they obviously see them, right? Right? If we've seen them, they've seen 100 polls. They know that they're not winning, the hearts and minds of the American people on this one.
Not at
But
all.
nothing's slowing down the effort. Speaking of optics, there's no doubt that they arrested that judge in Milwaukee. Those optics have gone against them. I don't know if that was like a trial balloon just to see what people would do, but they got instant reaction with follow through today. I mean, they basically triggered a march in Milwaukee today.
Right. And I'm seeing reports of a second judge being picked up and cuffed. I mean, this is insane. I saw the report on CNBC, and it's just insane because they don't have the people's support on this. People are chanting pro-immigration chants, wanting us to embrace our immigrant brothers and sisters, right? People coming here for a better life. Hold it, and Brock, like, how did these fools not know that our immigrants are such a vital cog to our economy, right? Like it's not long before we can't get fruits and veggies because there's nobody to pick up.
Home health care, you start thinking of all the jobs that are being done by people that are not citizens, undocumented, maybe with the workers permits and trying to just make a better life and send a lot of money home. But I think that whole factor, that the incredible like unintended consequence, I think, of that arrest in Milwaukee was that protest today was chanting, "No fear, immigrants are welcome here in Milwaukee," right? So for this is like the first time I've heard quote a mob, a protest talking about a pro-immigration message, something that we've talked about is so lacking in this country, and we don't expect it from the MAGA world, but we
Right.
expect it why no Democrat has ever been able to step up and raise their hand and say, you know what, we're pro-immigrant. Oh, by the way, we're all immigrants except the Native Americans and what this country was built on. And we believe in immigration and we endorse immigration. And we were going to put a really smart immigration policy in place. We're not just going to talk about how many drones we're buying and how many border police we're hiring. That's not like the headline of immigration policy. We're actually going to welcome people into our country because they contribute to the country. And so I just found it amazing that people are walking down the streets of Milwaukee now saying immigrants are welcome here.
Middle
Same
America.
there. I saw an interview this morning with, I think it was the CEO of Land O'Lakes, talking about how pissed off the rural farmers are. Let's just insert white into that. White rural farmers are that they have a labor shortage.
Surprise,
And I'm
you
like,
voted for it.
it's exactly, I'm thinking, like, that's exactly what you voted for. Oh, when you saw those signs that said deportation now at the convention, you thought it wasn't going to be the people that worked on your farm, your beloved employees? Like, just the disconnect is amazing. It just shows how racism just clouds people's visions, right? Where they can't even see their hand in front of their face because they just are so rabid about the others and the others, and then the dust settles and they realize that those others are a part of their social ecosystem and fabric and their neighbors and people that literally build their own wealth also, right?
Right.
Like they're just
Right.
waking up to it now, 99 days into the Trump regime. I thought it was almost
Exactly.
comical when I saw those comments coming out of the farming
Exactly.
community.
Now,
But you combine that with what goes on in Milwaukee, and it's an interesting day for immigration.
absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. Can we get there with Black America and white America? Will we see white America marching for Black America? And
Oh
here's
my
what
God. Imagine a no fear DEI is welcome here chant. Like we love DEI, affirmative action today or something like that,
hey,
right?
hey, no way.
Hey,
Affirmative action is here to stay. Hey, hey. I mean, that is the dream. That is the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King, where we are marching arm in arm for each other, for embracing one another as brothers and sisters in the struggle for a better life for all of us, a fairer life, a piece of the pie, right?
if people would just, yeah, I mean, it was almost there. It was kind of there in George Floyd, and nothing got done, right? No police reform really happened. That, what is that law that allows police to, basically beat the shit out of anyone and not be indicted?
Qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity wasn't able to get overturned. I think there were some small things that went on in Minneapolis, but there was a people remember that though. So yeah, I think it could happen again. Hopefully it doesn't take someone getting killed on camera, to get white people back out there with black people. But
Right.
these are like just small encouraging signs that are going on at the street level. They're not happening at the politics level. No political leaders saying I'm pro-immigrant. Still haven't heard that. Haven't heard that in
Right.
my entire life, right? We're
Right.
50 years plus on no one ever saying that.
Right.
But now the people in Milwaukee are saying it. And
Yep.
imagine if the farmers come out and say it, like, hey, we're pro-immigrant. We
Like, why
want these
wouldn't they?
people back. Why are you throwing these people out of the country? I need
Right.
them on my farm. They're my top employees. Now, do they
Right.
want to pay them? Do they want to pay them a fair wage? Do they actually want to
Want to
have
give them
like
health
OSHA?
care?
Probably not. I don't want to go that far, but they're noticing it's hurting them. So there's step one in this process.
The selfish motivation gets them advocating for the immigrant. So, watching the draft today, a lot of activity on cell phones, especially black men, right? Because you look at Richard Williams, Venus and Serena's father, you look at Earl Woods, Tiger's dad, you look at Deion Sanders, you look at Alonzo Ball, right? At some point, each one of these men have been turned into villains for being good fathers, right? For being almost too involved in their children's lives, but their kids are not out committing crimes. They're out breaking records. They're out exhibiting black excellence. Why is that such an issue for white America? Because that's how black men are, that's the narrative today. Whether you look on my Facebook page and my text messages, that is the narrative today. Why is it that when a black father is involved, it's too much? It doesn't fit the narrative, right? Because we don't have a lot, and I've shared this with you before. We don't have a lot of positive images of black men to refer to, right? Because our entertainment, right, is so degrading when it comes to the black male, even worse when it comes to the black female after the crack cocaine epidemic. And we can go all the way back to D.W. Griffith and Birth of a Nation at the turn of the 20th century. So, my question is, and it's not really a fair question for you because you've never thought this way, right? You've had black teammates. You understand what it is to be a part of a team. Like our knee football games at your house during basketball season were some of the funnest times of my life, right? Our donut runs to Ari Tobias's donut shop. Those were some of the best days of my life. I recall them so vividly. I just don't understand it. And as much as it angers me, it frustrates me, and it causes me to worry about the pain that's inflicted on my sons, right? And that's where the anger comes from. You can say whatever you want to me, just don't mess with my kids, right? And
I
so,
think it's also particularly, if I think about it, I think it's particularly these black fathers that are outspoken, not right, not the
yep,
quiet ones, right?
right,
No one had anything to say about Del Curry with Steph and Seth
yeah,
Curry
right,
because he was kind of a quiet guy, quiet player. I mean, I guess he's a commentator, but he's not controversial in any way, or he's
right,
not challenging systems in any way, shape, or form. So I think the thought is like, oh, that father with that type of, energy
right,
is going to have a son who's going to be an independent thinker. And we just want our black athletes to toe the line,
right,
perform, and, not be too outlandish until they become superstars in their own right. And then you can get away with,
right. With a little
talking.
bit, they're right,
Although in football in the NFL they almost don't allow it from anyone, right? It's all
right,
about the shield, it's about the league, and certainly about it. No one can ever be a quote a distraction to the team, right?
yep,
Everything
yep,
has to be within this lane. I mean, I feel like the NFL is the most racist organization in America,
right,
right? And everyone just homages it, but like, right, it's all black, white owners, white GMs, white coaches, black
yep,
players for the most part. But those
yep,
black players got to be like put within a box. I mean, Kaepernick was an extreme example, but like anyone who says even a word that's out of line, in the NFL in particular doesn't like that. And Shador Sanders becomes a fifth round pick with first round talent
right.
because he was considered overconfident in his interviews with
Help me,
teams. Like you don't
help me
want your
understand.
quarterback to be confident. Meanwhile, you got, I mean, Joe Namath, like we were always brought up on the image of the confident quarterback, and that was supposedly like what the position and what it was all about.
Right.
And you either had Terry Bradshaw, even right. You had to be
Yeah.
swashbuckling with swagger. Ken Stabler. I'm thinking of old
Right.
quarterbacks, the old white quarterbacks of our youth, and it
Right.
was revered for a quarterback to be that way and carry themselves with that kind of confidence because they're a leader of men.
Right.
Now, but of course, the double standard, right? When a black athlete comes along that way, then, oh, this guy can be a problem
Right.
and no one wants to touch him.
Right. And make it make sense because what happens is the NFL doesn't feel like they have to change because they own a day of the week, right? And everybody still patronizes it. They make more money than God. And they feel like, well, you know what? We know best, right? Roger Goodell doesn't mind because he's getting what? $1.5 million from each team. He makes his what, 45, $50 million a year. He doesn't care. He's got a black grandson. Still doesn't bother him the way these athletes are treated. And then, Brock, you look at just their boldness lately, like to go ahead and push this narrative about Shador Sanders, like this is somebody's son. The prank calls that from some kid with an Ole Miss sweatshirt on. Like the racism surrounding the Shador slide, it was disgusting if you looked at it on social media. And my friends and I were doing some draft pods and just watching it. And I mean, they both played in the NFL and they were disgusted by it. Just
It's
disgusted
like
by
the
it.
more things change, the more they stay the same. But that's what Trump 2.0 and this whole Project 2025 playbook has brought out to the fore, because like what's changed is like half the starting quarterbacks in the NFL are black now. Like it
Right.
really, I mean, it kind of could or should be a non-story or non-issue, because that
You would think it
that
is.
Rubicon's been jumped over, right? Like, I
Right.
mean, the black quarterbacks are some of the best in the league. I mean,
Right.
Mahomes is the best, right?
Right. And then
So, but when you talk Mahomes and Josh Allen, you're not necessarily talking black guy, white guy, right? You're just talking
right.
great
Quarterback.
quarterbacks.
Right.
We're just in the great quarterback conversation at that point. But
Right.
it still comes up, right? Anything at the margin, anything that's slightly out of line, you know, gets smacked in. And right now, everyone's been unleashed to be as racist as they want to be.
Yeah.
And because that's coming from the top down, because we're in a white supremacy movement and we've unleashed the hounds in that respect, the white hounds in that respect. So, yeah, it works its way into sports, of course. It works its way in everything.
Yeah. If you haven't had a chance to watch the documentary that Mike Vick did on Amazon about the black quarterback, he went back and talked to some of the old guys, Marlon Briscoe, Warren Moon, the guys who did it, when they were the only ones. And
Yeah.
it's some really interesting takes from them and how difficult it was. Remember, Warren Moon had to go play in Canada for a few years
Yeah.
and broke all
Yeah.
the records up there, won several Grey Cups, and then came back to the United States after what, like a decade up there.
Yeah, and Vic, of course, was just denigrated as just a runner, right? And now he was a trailblazer in his own right, because now if you're not, now you're just called a mobile quarterback, and
Right.
quarterbacks who can run are that ability to run, white or black. It's just viewed as such a benefit, whether it's Josh Allen or what's his name in DC. Like you just name it, like it's part of moving the sticks, or at
Right.
least getting out of the pocket and making plays. Like now, if you can't do that, like
Right.
your stock's gonna fall, right? Because you got to
Exactly.
be mobile. But yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, it's just, I mean, I mean, it must frustrate you watching all that
Yeah.
shit. I mean, it even bothers me as a white guy. I'm just like, come on. Like,
Right.
Shedeur Sanders is not a fifth round pick. You could argue he shouldn't be number one. I mean,
Right.
ironically, it's a black guy who went number one, Cam Ward. You could argue maybe he's not a first round quarterback. I don't know what his arm strength is and all that shit. I watched him play a few games. He won a lot of games, put up great numbers, but he's not a fifth round pick. There weren't like 8 quarterbacks better than him, because if there were, there would have been teams that beat him more. They won 10 games.
Right. Right. And that's the frustrating part about it, is that, you can't even sit and enjoy a game anymore without, these kinds of discussions bubbling up. And again, even when I'm in my silo of just black men and we're trying to watch football, we can't even really enjoy it because of some off-color remark that some veiled low-key race remark that somebody will make during the broadcast, and it just pisses you off. And so it takes the fun out of it. But it's interesting that this whole thing, and then Shiloh hasn't been drafted at all. Here's a 4-year starter, 5-year starter, in college football. Ran a 4.40.
And usually it's the sons of one of the greatest players in the history of the NFL. You would get the benefit of the doubt
Right.
positively, because you're like, hey, this guy's probably
Bloodline.
he knows the
Bloodline.
bloodlines. He
Yeah.
knows what it takes to be here, right? He's seen it firsthand. Yeah, I can imagine that's really frustrating. Does that work its way back towards? I always wonder the disconnect, like of white people, especially. I mean, college football or college sports is so racist, it's absurd. And I'm hoping that NIL and the payments like bring some power to black athletes, and they decide
Right.
what schools they want to go to. Because it's ironic, they're all going to southern schools, right? The SEC
Yeah.
is like the dominant player, making all this money off of black athletes. At least now they're getting a cut of the pie, which pisses so many white people off that the players are getting paid. It's like, huh? What? Just the coaches should make the money and the ADs? But anyway, we could do hours on that topic. But getting back to the question is, will white people come out in support of black people
Right.
in these protests in the way that we got a sliver of that today in
In
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
And, right now the jury's still out on that because
Right.
we're not seeing enough interracial events. We're
And
not
harmony.
seeing
Yeah.
enough talk
Messaging.
about racism as being an underlying theme of Project 2025. And in essence, the Trump administration and Doji and all of that. And this is a white supremacy movement. There's not enough talk about those elements, but
Right.
maybe we'll get there if we're finally talking about immigration. Maybe we're going to get around to talking about race as well.
We got you.
I think we're going to have to. Until we do, we're not going to have unified protests. And until we have unified protests, not going to have enough people out there to force change.
Oh, yeah.
And that's got to be the end game, right? Is forcing change, not just being seen and heard and patted on the butt like, oh, that was a nice little protest you had. Okay, now everybody go home and go back to watching Real Housewives.
Right.
I mean,
That's
how are we going
right.
to get change? You don't get change till the numbers are overwhelming. Numbers
Right.
can't be overwhelming till everybody's out there.
Right. Right. So let's keep an eye on that. Tomorrow we can chat about the State of the People Power Tour and find out how that movement is coming along because, that's,
I haven't
again,
seen anything online yet. I went to the website. I'm looking on social media. I haven't seen anything come out from that.
yeah, I was just checking
Maybe
YouTube
that's
to see if they.
strategic. I'm disappointed, but maybe that's strategic.
Right.
You tell me. You'll have a closer read on that.
Yeah, I'll keep looking. I was just checking YouTube. I didn't see any videos coming out just yet, but a lot leading up to it. So, again, that's a great way if you're a white politician and you want to be seen by black and brown faces, ask to be a part of that. No one's going to tell you no. Who's gonna tell Jamie Raskin no? Who's gonna tell Eric Swalwell no? You can't be a part of this movement too. No, we want the diverse coalition because Black America knows white America has to be a part of the message in order for it to be heard. We've been
They can
singing that
amplify.
song,
Yeah,
man. We've
they'll
been
be able to
singing that song
amplify.
since practice.
There's They're going to 10 cities, so there's 10 opportunities.
Yep, absolutely. All right, buddy. Great chat.
All
Enjoyed
right, good
seeing you.
stuff.
As always, glad you're feeling well.
Thank you, sir. All
Yes,
right, I'll talk to you
indeed.
tomorrow, Mark.
Sounds good. Peace.